Over the last 10 years, people have been making theories for the many mysteries in the FNAF series. But there's always been one that stuck out among the rest, being one of the first, and having people still question the truth till this very day. With that being...
The Bite of 87?!
Despite the fact that Bite of 87 doesn't really play a major role in the lore anymore, especially with the new direction the series has been taken in, it's still something I and many others in the community are still trying to figure out. But for quite a while now, I believe I've actually found the true culprit behind it. And trust me, it's not who you think it is. For so long, there have only ever been a few candidates, so to show how I've solved this mystery, let's start from scratch. And to do this, we have to look at all the information we're given about the Bite of 87. We first learn about the bite from Phone Guy, with us getting some essential information from him.
The characters do tend to wander a bit. They're left in some kind of free roaming mode at night. Something about their servos locking up, they get turned off for too long. They used to be allowed to walk around during the day, too. But then there was the Bite of 87. Yeah. It's amazing that the human body can live without the frontal lobe, you know?
We learn the bite happens in 1987. It's the reason the animatronics aren't allowed to roam around during the day anymore, that it took someone's frontal lobe, and they survived. The only other information on the bite we get in the first game is the custom night, where if you put in the code 1987, you get a jump scare from Golden Freddy. But before we assume anything, we have to take a look at FNAF 2, with it taking place in 1987. I wonder if there's any correlation. This is where we get our candidates for who potentially did it, and with this we now can easily wipe a few off the board, with characters like Balloon Boy and JJ, the Puppet, and the Cupcake, because all of these characters don't have teeth to begin with. And with this, I can easily say Withered Bonnie is also out for quite obvious reasons. Hey, I wasn't making fun of you. Hey, what are you doing? We can talk about this. Wait!
Hey, you. You're finally awake.
It also felt like most of these designs were meant to make you think they were the ones who did it, with Foxy and Golden Freddy already being two primary candidates from FNAF 1, with Foxy being broken and seeming to have a permanently open jaw, and Golden Freddy's secret jump scare in the custom night. You also have Toy Chica who loses her beak, Willy Chica having her jaw stuck wide open, and then you have Toy Freddy who might have bitten someone because, well, you know, he's kinda, fat? I mean, come on, what can I say? He's gained a few pounds, but even with that, some don't have any more evidence outside of the loose evidence of simply looking guilty. So we can get rid of a few others, like Withered Chica, The Shadows, Endo 2, Toy Freddy and Bonnie, and Golden Freddy, who as you all should know did the Bite of 83, but trust me, he'll play a special role later on, so let's just pin that for now. Now we're down to 4, but we can actually cut that in half, because now we have 2 toy animatronics and 2 wizards. We know this had to happen during the day, due to it being the reason they're no longer allowed to walk around. So you'd obviously assume the ones that are in parts and service wouldn't be allowed to walk around during the day. But then again, this is Fazbear's Entertainment. I know I could make a few arguments on why, but I'm sure I don't need to explain how the company that told their staff if they start bleeding out from the spring lock failure to maneuver away from the populated area before bleeding out. For a while now, Mangle is who many people expected, but I believe it was actually one of the withered animatronics. And to find this, we actually have to go back. How far back? I'd say about a week before. If you didn't know, The Week Before is a Canada game book where we learn about, well, the week before, as we see the events before the first game through the phone guy's perspective. This book made many people believe Foxy was the one behind the Bite of 87, with it saying, Foxy hasn't bitten any kids, with the implication that he bit an adult. Which, throughout the series, it's heavily implied the one who got bit was an adult, and most likely a staff worker. And a tip for dealing with animatronics that got aggressive was to flash a light at them, with it also being the mechanic he has in the second game. But other than that, that's all we get for him. Solid proof, right?
Wrong!
Because in this very same book, we see the light work on Bonnie. Even putting that aside for now, the book still seems to imply it was one of the original animatronics who did the bite. Especially because even if you could argue the bite came from Mangle or Chica, and that was the reason the toy animatronics were scrapped. There still isn't enough proof to pin either of them. Obviously for Chica there's her missing beak and her dialogue in UCN.
Where's my beak? Lodged in your forehead, of course.
And then you have Mangle, whose bite seemingly goes for the head, and their general brokenness, being the typical argument, with some even saying her audio sounds like a police call about a frontal lobe. But to me that always felt like the same argument as the Foxy saying freedom theory. But even with that, I feel some of you still might think they wouldn't let the withered animatronics out during the day. Which I understand. While Fazbear's has done stupid things, perhaps they wouldn't let broken or dangerous animatronics near the general public. Not even say, a mangled one. And have we all forgotten the free roam mode was most likely only deactivated after the bite of 87? Wouldn't that imply they could walk around during the day? If not, their servers would lock up just like Phone Guy says. You could say they've always had this, but I feel this is very unlikely, especially with this book seeming to especially point blame onto them. Like everyone's favorite second bite contender, Foxy. But there's actually one other character heavily implied to be the one who did the bite. In this very same book, it reads, Freddy's face is inches from your head. You'll wonder what it will be like to live without your frontal lobe. But Shnoodle, that's barely anything. I'm just making a mountain out of a molehill. You can't possibly be implying that it's... To prove to all of you it's Freddy, I must prove once and for all it's not Foxy, with what I call the Porygon solution. Just hear me out on this one. In 1997, an episode of Pokemon called Electric Soldier Porygon was released in Japan, with it being the episode focused on Porygon. But during the episode, after Team Rocket shoots a missile at the protagonist, they had to defend themselves. So when the missile was destroyed, there was a flash of lights, which caused many children to experience headaches, all the way up to seizures. Luckily it wasn't fatal and it was quickly pulled off the air. But even till this day, we haven't seen Porygon or any of its evolutions appear in the anime all the way up to today. But Porygon didn't cause the explosion. Pikachu did, shooting his electricity at the rockets, which caused the strobe effect. But who did they pin the blame on? Who did they throw under the bus? Porygon. And I believe they're doing the same thing with Foxy, a side animatronic who after that day was locked behind a curtain. The next time we see them outside of the spin-offs and prequels was its white and pink variant, being more related to Mangle than Foxy himself, and after that, they're never seen again. Even in Security Breach, they didn't even get an animatronic built in their image. Unlike Bonnie who got his spot stolen, Foxy was replaced. Besides, we all know William hated Foxy. Oh, but not our Freddy. Couldn't be Precious Freddy. What a sick joke. Because this is just the tip of the iceberg. Now you could still believe the others have their potential, but soon you'll see that's all mere breadcrumbs in comparison to the proof I have against Freddy Fazbear himself. But I'll start small. Firstly, we have the fact that Freddy is the last to leave his stage, and when he does, he stays out of sight, and this is certainly something he doesn't do in FNAF 2. Perhaps they reprogrammed him so he would be out of sight, so if he were to ever bite again, maybe people wouldn't even notice. But I know that's a flimsy argument. How about the secret photo of Freddy ripping his jaw open? No? Still not good enough? What about the hand marks on Freddy's face? You might say those aren't really handprints. That's just how the model looks. But these very same handprints are pointed out in an official FNAF book. But the books haven't always been the most factual. How about the fact this very same handprint is pressed directly into the model of the Help One Its design? Same game that couldn't make the Phantoms right, or the Wizards at all, yet found the time for a subtle detail in Freddy's design. One might argue that since Golden Freddy has the same base model in the first game, doesn't that mean he'd have the same handprint too? Yes he would. Because Golden Freddy has also bitten someone, and just like Freddy, he would share these same handprints forced upon his face while being fought against as a head is slowly crushed in his metal jaws. Almost symbolic, one might say. But I'm still not done, because in the FNAF movie we see Freddy bite straight through a woman. The only other animatronic we see do something even remotely similar is the Cupcake. If you still don't believe me, let's look at his jump scare in FNAF 2. The very same thing used to argue for Foxy and Mangle being the perpetrator. But they don't show a proper bite. None of them do. Except for one. time and time again he has been shown to bite. And my final point, my piece of resistance. In the first game on the wall, there's a list of rules for the guests to follow, and if you go down the list, we find ourselves at Rule 6, and it reads, "Don't touch Freddy." Isn't that odd? Isn't that strange? Only pointing out not to touch Freddy? Not Freddy and gang, not the animatronics, not even the out-of-service Foxy, but Freddy. Singular. It's almost like this bear has a track record. I hope you all enjoyed this theory. This actually isn't my first time making this video. I did the same exact theory about a year ago, but I wasn't happy with the video, so I privated it. And now, I feel I've grown enough to where I can actually make this video and be proud of it. I also want to say, I'm not becoming a FNAF theory channel. I really think that's better to leave it to the professionals. But maybe I'll do another eventually, only if there's actually something to theorize about. But for now, I'm finished. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing, liking, and oh yeah, think fast, Trickle Nuts.
Free Fazbear!